Prime Minister that will be, according to him, first by the Indian community here. But the Prime Minister's schedule from here on, after the next 2 hours, once he lands and then reaches the hotel, will be once again hitting the ground running immediately. He will be meeting about 24 people, which will include industry leaders, CEOs, health sector experts, Nobel laureates, as well as musicians, artists, academicians, all sorts of people, and not just of the Indian origin, but also otherwise. For instance, he'll be meeting Tesla founder Elon Musk as well. Apart from that, he will be meeting astrophysicist Mr. Tyson as well. So a huge number of people that he's going to engage with. Let me put this into perspective, and especially the meeting with the CEOs, with scientists specifically. This is because India and the US are looking at forging closer ties in the tech sector. And last year, during Prime Minister Modi and President Biden's meeting on the sidelines of the Quad Summit, the two had announced ISET, which is the initiative on critical and emerging technologies, under which it is the industry on both sides that has to come together to take this forward. So basically what is happening at the moment is that the industry leaders are being met with to figure out what exactly is it that is required for them to be able to forge these closer ties, because these can be done through the industry, not only via government-to-government contact. We are just learning that the Prime Minister's flight has in fact landed at the John F. Kennedy Airport. From there, it will take the PM about 45 minutes to 1 hour. The airport is not close to this spot to reach here at the hotel. Once he is here at the hotel, I pointed out that he'll be meeting those 24 people. Today's slot has been reserved for meetings with CEOs, because tomorrow morning he starts off with the International Yoga Day event, and immediately after the International Yoga Day event, which is in the early morning hours between 8 to 9 p.m., he'll be leaving for Washington, D.C., which is going to be the place for the formal state visit, which will have the bilateral meeting on the 22nd, followed by his address to the U.S. Congress, followed by the dinner, the state dinner thrown by President Biden.
Right, Maha. Long day for you, of course, ahead, and some very important meetings also that are lined up. We'll give you lots more that is lined up, but first, time for a short break.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right, and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right, and center with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change, and it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, Building a Blueprint for Climate Action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories.
because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets.
Welcome back. And Prime Minister Modi has arrived at New York. His flight has landed at New York. In fact, it's a matter of time where we may even get the visuals of him leaving the airport. I'm also being joined by my colleague Maha Siddiqui, who has been giving us all the details from the ground, from whatever is happening in US, and will continue to do so for the next 3 days. Maha, so Prime Minister Modi has landed at New York. You were mentioning around 45 minutes before he arrives or reaches the hotel where you are standing. Of course, a lot at stake also, Maha, because if you look at the geopolitical conditions or the environment in which this meeting is happening, there's a war going on that many in our generation would have never thought, and it's just an ongoing war. The repercussions are so much in terms of allies that may be close to US or to India. A lot really at stake even as this meeting does happen.
Well, that's absolutely right. And in fact, that question was asked to by me to some of the sources as to whether the issue of Ukraine might come up, even though India and the US has in fact said that it has a better understanding of India's position vis-a-vis China, vis-a-vis Russia, sorry. But will that matter come up again? Will the US continue to push India a little more as far as Russia is concerned? From what we understand is that as far as India is concerned, it's not in its talking points. However, it could probably be on the talking points of the US side, and one cannot definitely rule out that possibility. So as far as what my sources have told me is that India's reply is going to be the standard position that India has taken over the last 1 year. And that is that as far as the war is concerned, Prime Minister has already articulated himself to Vladimir Putin, the Russian president himself, that this is not an era of war, and that India certainly wants to play a more constructive role in being able to make any contribution in stopping this war. India's position as far as the war is concerned is very clear. As far as its relationship with Russia is concerned is also very clear, that Russia has been an old friend of India, an old ally, and that relationship will continue while India has already raised the issue of the war at the highest level with the Russian side. So yes, this is a very critical time at which this meeting is happening, and not just in view of Russia, but also, Sneha, the other aspect of China, the common threat of China, as I would put it, for both India and the US, especially in the Indo-Pacific. And that is why you see constantly the reference to the Indo-Pacific coming up in any statement by the Indian or the American side. Even as far as this meeting is concerned, when it was in fact announced by the White House that President Biden is inviting Prime Minister Modi for the state visit, there was a reference to Indo-Pacific, which clearly means that the two sides are looking at closer ties, forging better ties with an eye on China, even though they don't say it explicitly. And this is both in the sector of, for instance, defense, to better collaboration, as I was pointing out, even in the tech sector. After all, many believe under the space sector as well, that the modern warfare will be fought in space. Space has satellites, communication linkages, and modern warfare is about how you manage communication. If communication links are broken at a critical time, then an entire conflict can go from one side to another. That is the reason that India and the US are looking at further collaboration even in the space sector, where they are looking at ways and means to make it more secure, safe, and apart from that, technology cooperation as far as semiconductors are concerned is certainly going to be extremely important for both sides. The initiative has already been announced, one such initiative earlier this year. Closer ties on making the supply chain of semiconductors resilient is critical. Now, why? Let's try and understand that as well. What are semiconductors? These are nothing but small chips. That technology is used in the small chips that are used in almost everything around us, from household electronic goods to also our banking ATMs, cars, and technology around us and beyond us, and therefore it is critical that the supply chain remains resilient. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we had seen how the supply chain got disrupted, creating hurdles for the automobile sector. They are used in GPS navigation and a lot of other things in car manufacturing. Therefore, the two sides coming together for more packaging and manufacture of semiconductors is going to be one very important aspect. We are likely to see some big announcement related to that sector as well probably on the 22nd of June. So yes, in terms of geopolitics, as you asked, Sneha, both Russia and China become important from different perspectives. From the American side, maybe Russia; from both the American and the Indian side, China.
Right. In fact, Maha, just before we move on to other elements that we are bringing you from US, what's interesting also is the state dinner that is going to be witnessed by Prime Minister Modi. Prime Minister Modi, of course, going to be part of that. And it's his first visit to US, or the first state visit to US, but not really his first visit, Maha. How is US preparing for this state meet?
Well, absolutely. This is certainly not his first visit to the United States since he took over as Prime Minister. Yes, Neha, the previous visits were categorized as working visits or simply a bilateral visit. A state visit, as we just ran that package, how it is different from any other visit is clear. He will be getting a guard of honor, a 19-gun salute. That is what we know as far as a state visit is concerned. A state dinner is an integral part of a state visit, and the dinner will be hosted at the White House in their lawns by President Joe Biden. We are expecting that the White House has invited about 250 people roughly for that state dinner. This will include a fairly decent amount of chunk of Indian Americans. Now remember, the Indian American community is very vital, both from the Indian perspective as well from the American perspective. After all, the Silicon Valley, the tech hub of America, is powered by Indians leading from the front. And this diaspora also creates a connect between India and America. So this a lot of Indian Americans are expected to be present at that state dinner. Typically what happens in a state dinner is when the guest arrives, which in this case will be Prime Minister Modi, he will be introduced to all those guests who are invited, after which a state dinner, as I understand, can last really long. So it will start at 6:30, that is the norm. State dinner starts at 6:30. As we have an example, when the South Korean president was here, he was only the second leader to have been invited for a state visit by President Joe Biden. The dinner went on up till 1 a.m. in the morning. So that's how long a state dinner can go on. Of course, that state dinner became also, in some sense, clips became viral because the South Korean president sung American Pie at the state dinner. But for President, although this comes in the 9th year tenure of the Prime Minister Modi, this state dinner being thrown from President Biden's perspective in his 3 years is only the third. The other one, as I said, the South Korean president, which has just happened, and before that, the French President Emmanuel Macron, who was also invited by President Biden for a state dinner.
Right, Maha. Thank you for those details. Maha Siddiqui reporting from New York, and she will be covering all the 3 days that Prime Minister Modi is going to be in US. And from the first International Yoga Day in 2015 to now, that's the 2023, yoga not only continues to be popular with countries across the world, but is also turning to be a crucial diplomacy tool for India, what many are now even terming as yoga diplomacy. Here is a brief glimpse of how this journey seems to have unfolded.
Unites. It unites body and mind, humanity and nature, and millions of people across the globe for whom it is a source of strength, harmony and peace. In a dangerous and divided world, the benefits of this ancient practice are particularly precious.
This message of unity of body and mind has been practiced across the world for decades. But yoga truly went global in 2015. After Prime Minister Narendra Modi's proposal to celebrate 21st June as the International Day of Yoga was adopted unanimously by 175 nations.
जब हम क्लाइमेट चेंज की बात करते हैं, हम होलिस्टिक हेल्थ केयर की बात करते हैं, हम प्रकृति के साथ जुड़ने की बात करते हैं, हम जब बैक टू बेसिक की बात करते हैं, तब मैं उस विषय पर आज विशेष रूप से आपसे एक बात कहना चाहता हूं। योग हमारी पुरातन पारंपरिक अमूल्य देन है। योग केवल व्यायाम भर न होकर अपने आप से तथा विश्व व प्रकृति के साथ तादात्म्य को प्राप्त करने का माध्यम है। यह हमारी जीवन शैली में परिवर्तन लाकर तथा हम में जागरूकता उत्पन्न करके जलवायु परिवर्तन से लड़ने में सहायक हो सकता है। आइए हम एक अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस को आरंभ करने की दिशा में कार्य करें।
Since then, world over, 21st June sees yoga enthusiasts collectively perform asanas across multiple time zones.
कि योग की जो तस्वीरें कुछ वर्ष पहले केवल घरों में आध्यात्मिक केंद्रों में दिखती थी, वो आज विश्व के कोने-कोने से आ रही है। ये तस्वीरें आत्मिक बोध के विस्तार की तस्वीरें हैं। योग अब एक वैश्विक पर्व बन गया है। योग किसी व्यक्ति मात्र के लिए नहीं, संपूर्ण मानवता के लिए है।
In line with India's push for one earth, one family, one future, also the motto of India's G20 presidency, this year's International Day of Yoga theme is Yoga for Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. And to gauge its growing popularity, an international market research agency pegged the yoga market size at nearly $37,500 million in 2019. And it is projected to reach a whopping $66,226 million by the year 2027. But what makes this growth exceptional is the penetration of yoga. From homes to schools to corporate offices and yoga studios, everyone is hitting the yoga mat to beat the stress and find a balanced and healthy way of life. From yoga as a fad to yoga as a global way of life, this perhaps is India's biggest contribution to the world today. Bureau Report, NDTV.
And as Prime Minister Modi's US visit has begun and he has arrived at New York, I'm also being joined by a panel here to break down on how crucial really is this visit, not only for India, but also the United States? I'm being joined by Nicole Berner-Schmitz, who's a former National Political Director for NARAL Democratic Strategist. Thank you very much for joining us. Also, Ajay Jain Putoria, who's an Indian-American community leader. Thank you for joining us. We'll go to both of them and get their views on this particularly, but first a short break.
Class on, match off, meeting on.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change, and it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and...
All right, these are the visuals of Prime Minister Modi arriving in New York, his flight landing, and this marks the beginning of his 3-day visit to the United States, where a series of meetings are being held. Of course, Prime Minister Modi, this is his first state visit to the United States.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show.
Joe Biden, the US President, Prime Minister Modi is just the third. So there are a series of meetings which, of course, are expected over the next few days. But he will kickstart his day, of course, just minutes after reaching the hotel, where he is also going to be received by the Indian diaspora. He is going to be meeting key leaders from different arenas, whether it is Elon Musk of Tesla, also the Twitter owner now, as well as other leaders, including Grammy Award winner and singers as well. And I'm also being joined by Maha Siddiqui right now. Maha, so these initial visuals of Prime Minister Modi landing at New York, and you've of course been talking about how important and relevant this whole visit has been. But Maha, what are we expecting at the hotel? You know, you were mentioning it's around a 45 minutes travel from the airport to the hotel. What are we expecting at the hotel particularly, Maha?
So if I can just show you a glimpse of some of the people behind us, they are from the Indian community, and these people have already arrived here right across the hotel. They're already in some sense having their own little celebration to welcome the Prime Minister over here. So they are largely going to be the the Indian diaspora that is present here at the moment to welcome the Prime Minister. Now the Prime Minister, of course, will be immediately landing here. There is a lot of security. These people, of course, will not be allowed to go anywhere close to him at the moment. And as far as the security is concerned, I'll just get my camera person to pan and show you this entire stretch outside the New York Palace Hotel, where the Prime Minister will be staying, has been cordoned off. So even we've been cordoned off to one part of the street on the other side of the hotel. The entire stretch on the front of the hotel, even on the back, has been cordoned off. The security sweep for this entire stretch has already been done. The security personnel have been here since about 8:39 in the morning. That is the time that all these arrangements have been made. The Prime Minister will be coming and immediately going inside the hotel, after which in the next few hours after his arrival, he will start meeting those people that you were talking about, 24 people in all who he will be meeting in New York, ranging from industry leaders, CEOs, which includes somebody like Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, the owner of Twitter. Apart from that, he'll be meeting scientists, academicians, artists, and such people and many other such people who really have made a mark in the American society. This includes some Indian Americans as well, like Chandrika Tandon. Now, he'll also be meeting apart from the industry leaders, investors as well. So all this with an eye on better, first of all, business ties between the two countries. America is India's largest trading partner, but often we see issues with regards to trade coming up between the two sides. During President Trump's tenure, there were a lot of such issues that cropped up, especially on the issue of tariffs, which President Trump used to constantly keep reiterating. Now, as far as trade is concerned, those conversations happen, but outside the realm of any such big meeting. Trade is a very important component of the bilateral ties between India and the United States. So that is why we are seeing a thrust on the industry and CEOs. But not just that. Look at the kind of people that the Prime Minister is going to be meeting here. Tesla, which is a company we all know, which talks about futuristic travel modes as well. He's meeting an astrophysicist as well. All that with a view on a better tech cooperation between the two countries as well, India and the United States, because the tech partnership is going to drive these ties in the future. And the India and the United States are already working on what they call the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, under which elements like semiconductors, artificial intelligence, quantum, a lot of such issues are being discussed and talked about. Even space comes under that ISET as well. And these are all futuristic with an aim to, really give competition to, as well as China, for instance, which is perhaps a little ahead of India as far as space and AI is concerned. So all these are very important aspects, and they will be dealt with by the Prime Minister on the first day of his visit. A bit of that will be dealt with on the first day of his visit here in New York as he meets these 24 people.
Right, Maha. Thank you for all of those details. And as we mentioned and introduced our panelist before we took a break, we have Nicole Brenner with us, as well as Ajay Jain Bhutoria. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. But first to you, Nicole Brenner-Schmitz. How do you really look at this visit by Prime Minister Modi and the kind of invite that has been extended by US? Definitely a turning point in US-India bilateral relations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is an invitation that is, includes an official state visit, which is a tremendous move forward, and I think a signal of all the positive conversations that the U.S. is looking for. But I think not to be underestimated is the fact that people in both the Democratic and Republican parties are excited to hear the Prime Minister's address to Congress and to have this conversation and move forward on a lot of these different aspects. So to have a bipartisan consensus in Washington is not the most usual thing. So it's exciting that they're going to move forward and certainly, hopefully, have some productive conversations about a whole swath of issues.
Right. Let me also get the first comments from Ajay Jain Bhutoria. We are already getting visuals of celebrations outside the hotel. Of course, a lot of them will not be able to meet the Prime Minister, but I believe you have been invited to one such dinner. What is the Indian community really expecting?
So this is a very historic visit, and the whole community is very excited. And President Biden and Secretary Blinken and the whole administration has been working towards strengthening U.S.-India relationships. And this visit is a landmark and will take the U.S.-India relationship to the next level. Whether there will be discussions around focusing on technology transfer as well as strengthening the U.S.-India defense relationship with where opportunities of US would be looking at India to less reliance on Russian weapons and opportunity to use the latest technology from US defense weapons. There will be opportunity to increase the trade between US and India. The current trade is around $100 billion, and the opportunity is to grow to $500 billion in next 10 years. So there will be discussions around shaping that vision. There will be discussions around bringing manufacturing into India more, around semiconductors and health related items. And of course, the whole Indian diaspora is excited by the visit of the Prime Minister. There have been celebration last 2 days almost across 20 cities from New York to San Francisco to Chicago, where the diaspora gathered and had parades and celebrations. And there will be more excitement, around 4,000 to 5,000 people in the South Lawn. And I look forward to seeing the Prime Minister at the state lunch hosted by the Vice President.
Right. In fact, Nicole Brenner, one of the major challenges really for this meet that would be taking place is to be able to bring in a cohesion or an understanding with respect to a very challenging geopolitical environment amid which this meeting is happening. And US and India have made their stands on these geopolitical challenges very, very clear. So both of them meeting and talking on very critical issues. Of course, they will be focusing on their bilateral relations, but it won't be void of all that's happening internationally.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as they discuss their bilateral relations, it affects the relationships with countries like Russia and like China as our two countries talk about their priorities. And as we continue to grow our work together, particularly in the defense industry, what effect that has with how we deal with countries like China and Russia, which are important. I think we have a lot of line up on our concerns about China, and our two countries can have a lot of agreement about where to go forward with that. And I think the US is very interested in working with India even more so that it's not quite as focused and dependent on Russia. And these are all the parts of the chessboard that go on. But we're coming into these conversations with a positiveness, a celebration, really, of Indian culture.
Nicole, let me interrupt you at this point. These are the visuals that are on your screen of Prime Minister Modi having exited his aircraft, and he's being received at the airport by dignitaries. An important moment ahead of the 3-day visit, as this visit actually has begun as Prime Minister Modi has landed. Now, there are a series of meetings that are expected to happen in minutes from now. It would be around 45 minutes to an hour before he does reach the hotel where he will be, and eventually will be also meeting leaders from different segments, whether it be technology, scientists, or even those from the music and music world as well. So he'll be meeting different leaders, as the Indian leaders have called them, Indian officials have called them thought leaders, and that also being very important in terms of how India is looking to partner with the US in much deeper terms. We must remember some very strong defense as well as tech sector agreements are likely. There's also been a background to all of this, as the ISEC Pact was signed, and there was this move to deepen the defense and tech partnerships. Now, that is going to be really the basis or the background to which this meeting will be happening. And let's return to our guests at this point. So let me go over to Ajay Jain Bhutoria. Ajay, you're seeing these visuals of Prime Minister exit his aircraft. We've also seen visuals already of celebrations outside the hotel where he's expected in minutes from now, particularly for the Indian community, as it were. These defense and tech partnerships are going to mean a lot for both the communities from the US as well as India. But what really is the immediate interest that the Indian community is looking at? Is it also the fact that they have finally, it's such a warm welcome, it's such a big invite that Prime Minister Modi has received from the Biden administration?
So, yeah, I mean, that's a great thing. I mean, if you look at almost around 4.5 to 5 million Indian Americans in US, they have been contributing into the economy, into they are leaders in tech industry, leaders in medical and in the political world, and they are all there. With the Prime Minister visit and with such significant importance given by this administration to this US-India relationship, this also, enhances the profile of the Indo-American community as a whole in the country and shares that both the countries are standing together with close allies. As much as India needs US needs India to counterbalance China in the Indo-Pacific region. So this brings a much strength in the bilateral relationship, both people to people as well between US and India, and that's going to great moment of pride for the entire Indian American community here. The community is looking forward to celebrate, and I know thousands of people are going to be in DC, arriving in DC starting today. I mean,
Nicole, as this visit begins, as the meetings are scheduled, what is the big message that you're looking at from the US as well as India?
Well, I think we're looking at what are the positive effects and what are the things that we can move forward on. This visit is very much about looking at where we have agreement, what we think we can work together on, and not focusing on some of the differences that exist, but really that we're both looking at how to increase our trade, how to rely on the technology, maybe some discussions about climate. I think it's a good chance for the Biden administration to really show and flex its international credentials. You have to remember, President Biden, when he was in the Senate, was chair and ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. This is what he really loves to work on. But when he took over in 2020, really had to drill down and focus on domestic issues that America was facing. So I think this is a good opportunity for the administration to show that the Democrats and their party are just as focused on international security and defense and this kind of going forward.
Right. And Mr. Ajay, while the world will be looking at this bilateral meeting very carefully, also very interesting would be how yoga is going to be the center of a lot that would happen over the next 24 hours at least. From what from the journey that began in 2015 with the International Yoga Day being declared to today, where Prime Minister Modi is also going to be part of the Yoga Day celebrations. He's going to be even performing yoga, as it were. Even terms like yoga diplomacy being coined for India. How is the Indian diaspora looking at this? Do you perform yoga?
Yes, I do perform yoga, and yoga has become integral part of the Western world, integral part of the American community in general. I mean, thank you for India to leading the way and bringing the yoga into this world. And health and fitness is one of the priority of this administration. So I'm hoping to see next Yoga Day being celebrated in the White House lawns. I hope that will be happening soon. And so this bringing the yoga, Prime Minister Modi doing yoga celebration tomorrow through the United Nations sends a very strong message to the world that we are also interested in the fitness and health of the world, and spiritual fitness and mental, spiritual and body fitness. At the same time, India is also emerging as a global leader, as a democratic global leader, which will be leading in and showing its strength in the Indo-Pacific region and collaborating. So this is, we're looking forward to more discussions during the next 3 days, I mean.
Right. In fact, Nicole, it's not just about health and fitness alone. It's also going to be very interesting to see a very political message, even though it's not intended, but the political influence through all of this is also very, very discreet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the population of Indian Americans is growing more and more. We're also seeing more and more Indian Americans get elected to their state legislatures, their city councils, to Congress. And we're seeing their political power and their message grow through, whether it's political action committees or their votes or what the community is leaning into. So we're seeing a lot of that growth happening, and it looks to, even expand even further in the next few years.
Nicole, how is
And
US?
I want to add on to the point.
Go ahead, Ajay.
I want to add on to the point which says in the last general election, in the 2020 election, the Indo-Americans, was 5 million Indo-Americans votes played the major, part to the victory of this administration. They were in the major states like Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Georgia, where these votes were the crucial votes which defined the margin of the victory. And as Nicole said, more and more, we now have almost 5 or 6 members of Congress who are members of Indian origin and who will be welcoming. They call themselves as Samosa Congress. Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, Congressman Khanna, Congressman Pramila Jayapal, Amy Bera, and the newly elected Congressman, I'm just blanking out his name right now. So it's a matter of pride, and we have across, if I look at San Francisco, Silicon Valley, across multiple cities, we have mayors and council members who are Indian origin, and more young Indian Americans who are born here are running for Congress. Every day there's a new young Indian American announcing they want to run and they be part of this political process.
Right. That's an interesting point that you have brought in, Mr. Ajay. Nicole, how are the ordinary citizens in US, not the Indian American, but how are the ordinary US citizens looking at all of this?
Well, I think they're just starting to focus and realize that this is happening. It's starting to get coverage in our mainstream media as he arrives in New York today. So, but as any state dinner gets the interest of people, but I think that it's something that the American people, they're aware of, right? Like you were talking about the yoga and how it's really integrated itself into everyday American life. And we're seeing that with more and more traditions and those cultures. And so I think that the American public is always excited when they see us working with other countries to move forward on bilateral agreements.
Right, and these are the visuals of Prime Minister Modi being welcomed at the airport as he arrived in New York a couple of minutes ago, almost half an hour ago. And he's right now being welcomed at the airport. He's not started his trip or his road trip to the hotel, as it were, which is around 45 minutes from the airport. So you already have visuals coming in from the airport. Prime Minister Modi being welcomed by a very excited and interested Indian diaspora. Maha Siddiqui joins us right now. Maha, Prime Minister Modi still at the airport and being welcomed with much excitement.
Well, of course, as we know that this is an important visit. It's the first state visit of the Prime Minister to the US. The earlier visits were all categorized as working visits, bilateral visits, but a state visit accords the person a bigger honor. There'll be a guard of honor, there'll be a state dinner thrown for the Prime Minister. In that sense, this visit, that is why this visit is being keenly watched for not just in terms of the outcomes or takeaways, but also a lot in terms of symbolism as well, Sneha. As far as the takeaways are concerned, even those are likely to be quite big. For instance, much is being talked about the takeaways in the defense sector. So the two big deals we are looking at probably is one of the joint production of GE jet engines that will be used for HAL's latest version of the light combat aircraft. Now this, if this announcement comes through, is going to be extremely huge because this is joint production of a technology that is American. Whether this will pave the way for technology transfer is an important aspect that is being looked at because India is stressing on Make in India, and for which it is important that there is not just joint production but also technology transfer, which is critical for India being a large importer of defense equipment. Another important deal that is more in terms of America, which will be the buyer in this case, which will be the seller, in this case, and for India, which will be the buyer, is important in the sense of what we are seeing is bolstering India's security equipment apparatus purchase, whatever you may call it, that of the drones that India will buy from America. So we are expecting that to happen as well. And technological partnership that I pointed out, which is certainly critical in view of China and the Indo-Pacific, its growing aggression. Also, just not relying on China and Taiwan alone for semiconductors, which is a critical component of many electronic items and powers even bigger things like, for instance, bank ATMs, cars. And we've seen the fallout of the supply chain disruption of semiconductors during the COVID-19 pandemic on the automobile industry specifically. So these are some of the critical, important aspects, and that is why we are seeing a great thrust on this visit of the Prime Minister, very critical and important from both India and America's perspective. Sneha.
Right. Maha, in fact, while you were mentioning about Indo-Pacific region and about how this meeting is going to be very critical with what we're expecting in terms of China and about focus on semiconductors being produced in India as well, manufactured in India as well. Maha, this whole meeting between US and India also is extremely important for the Indian diaspora, as it were. You can see from from at least the sense that we are getting sitting here, from all the visuals that are emerging, the excitement which has been around. It's also not only about what the two countries are really looking in terms of the bilaterals, but also in terms of what people would be expecting for the next several years.
Well, certainly the diaspora also shows enthusiasm because there is certainly excitement when the Prime Minister of a country that your origins lie in is visiting a country. So that is why, and especially a section of the Indian diaspora that ardently follows the Prime Minister, for them it is of huge interest, and that is why we are seeing a group having gathered here outside his hotel as well. Now, of course, even they know that they might not be able to meet the Prime Minister, so to speak, because of the security arrangements, but this group has nonetheless come here. They are enthusiastic, waving the Indian as well as American flag. That enthusiasm aside, diaspora is a critical component of soft diplomacy as well between any two countries, and we have seen how leveraging that helps countries build better ties with another country. So the diaspora becomes critical in that sense. Also, the Indian diaspora, particularly in America, is very well regarded because of the kind of contribution that it has made to the American society. After all, the Silicon Valley, the tech hub of America, is pretty much powered by people of Indian origin. Some of the CEOs of some of the top tech companies are Indians. So in that context, the diaspora becomes important. The engagement with diaspora, keeping them as a bridge, and I would cite the example of the United Kingdom here. They refer to the diaspora and to the movement of people as a living bridge. So clearly, you know, that can be that reference can be used anywhere, and that reference can perhaps even be used between India and America. This is a bridge that builds ties between the two countries. The Prime Minister will separately be meeting the diaspora as well in Washington, D.C. The event will not be at the scale of what we've seen in the past, for instance, Howdy Modi, or when he visited New York for the first time after he became the Prime Minister. The capacity, though, is going to be slightly smaller there, 800 to 1,000, but we are expecting the diaspora to come at the Reagan Center, Ronald Reagan Center in Washington, D.C. To hear the Prime Minister speak. That diaspora event will take place just before the Prime Minister leaves from America for Egypt.
Right, Maha Siddiqui, thank you for those details. Prime Minister Modi being welcomed at New York airport. You can see the Indian flags being held by the Indian diaspora who have gathered at the airport to welcome Prime Minister Modi, his first state visit to the United States, and also just ahead of that very interesting state dinner also that is going to be very, very keenly watched. You also have the celebration shots outside the hotel where Prime Minister Modi is shortly expected, and he'll also be meeting a series of leaders, including Elon Musk and several others from the science and music world. We'll keep bringing you all the details, but for now it's time for a short break.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Hello, I'm Sneha Koshi, and we are bringing you all the details of Prime Minister Modi's visit to the United States. He has been welcomed at the New York airport, the first state visit of Prime Minister Modi that is being seen as a major turning point for the India-US bilateral relations, with deeper cooperation in defense industry and sharing high technology in sharp focus. A series of meetings are going to be held. The celebrations already happening at the airport as well as outside the hotel where Prime Minister Modi is expected shortly, and will then be meeting industry leaders from various segments. We'll keep bringing you all the details. I'm being joined by my colleague Maha Siddiqui right now. We'll try and get Maha back. There seems to be some problem with the connection. However, as I have been mentioning to you, here are the visuals on your screen. Prime Minister Modi being welcomed at the New York airport. You see the Indian flags being held by the Indian diaspora. A lot of excitement amid the Indian diaspora. Of course, a lot is expected in this state visit of Prime Minister Modi, a first state visit of Prime Minister Modi. In fact, under President Joe Biden, there have been only 3 state visits of international leaders, and Prime Minister Modi's is just one of those 3. So a lot of importance being paid to what is being seen as the bilateral relations of US and US as well as India. But it's not just about the bilateral ties. It's also about how the world will be looking at the 2 leaders meet and what really emerges out of this 3-day visit of Prime Minister Modi to India. I'm also being joined right now by Ajay Jain Bhutoria, who's an Indian American community leader. Ajay, there's already visuals of celebrations that we can see. So celebrations happening outside the hotel. Now, what are we expecting over the next few hours? One being Prime Minister Modi meeting leaders from different segments, and number 2, in terms of Prime Minister Modi also performing yoga at UN for the International Yoga Day. This whole journey marking a huge importance for India as well as the Indian diaspora. Ajay, your Zoom seems to have been on mute. Can you unmute that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very historic trip, and if we will look back after 5 years on this trip will be redefining the India-US relationship, taking it into next orbit, strengthening it. And this trip is also important from regional and global issues. The visit will include discussions on regional and global issues of mutual concern, both for India and US, such as stability in the Indo-Pacific region, countering and balancing China in the Indo-Pacific region, counterterrorism efforts, and cooperation in multilateral forums like the United Nations. It is important for India to get into the Security Council in the United Nations, and I think India will be seeking US support around that. And then the commitment of both countries to address global challenges around climate change as well as economic growth. So towards economic growth, the countries would be looking towards the manufacturing opportunities in India, and it is in India's interest to become a semiconductor manufacturing hub when US is trying to shift away from its dependency on Taiwan as the key supplier of the semiconductor, where President Biden had invested a huge amount through the CHIPS Act for bringing manufacturing in US. It is also important to look other partners beyond China and Taiwan, and India with a huge amount of skilled workforce as well as all the avenues which could support this manufacturing in India. India could play a great role, and that I think that should be on Prime Minister Modi's agenda to bring manufacturing around that into India. So we will be seeing more discussions around these happening in the next 3 days.
Ajay, while India, of course, is looking at deepening its bilateral ties, particularly in defense and tech sector, that has been the focus for India and US over the last several months, as it were. The Indian diaspora are people who have been at the forefront of both of these sectors, and particularly in the tech sector, the Silicon Valley and otherwise, the Indian diaspora there have been main contributors to the US. So how is the Indian diaspora particularly looking at the agreements that may be forged between US and India in the tech sector, the deepening of ties? What do they really stand to benefit? Could you give us the top three?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The Indian diaspora, whether you look at from Sundar Pichai to any other leading CEOs of all the leading companies out here in US, they are all interested in expanding their footprints in India and expanding their presence in India in terms of already they have their presence and expanding their presence. So that will be one side where they will be looking forward to discussing with the Prime Minister Modi to have, expanding their businesses in India and growing that. That's on the one side. The other side is that the education, there are almost over 200,000 students who come to US and they go through the immigration process, H1 and backlog and green card issues. So I think there will be some of the diaspora will be looking that the Prime Minister Modi brings up the issues of immigration and green card backlogs to this administration. And overall, the strengthening of US-India relationship also brings, a matter of pride between people-to-people relationship between US and India. So I think the diaspora is looking forward to this visit.
Right. It's going to be also interesting, Ajay, to see what emerges out of this meeting. But how different, just for the ordinary Indian diaspora, they're a very strong segment of the US population. Why do you see Prime Minister Modi's visit to US very different from what would have been earlier Indian leaders who would have visited US, just from a very ordinary citizens perspective who have been contributing very strongly to the US economy?
Prime Minister Modi is, I think, the, if I don't say the most popular leader in the world, I can say one of the most popular leader in the world. And for him coming to United States, it's a matter of pride for every Indo-American living here when they see their prime minister, when the country is growing so fast, is becoming a leader in the world in every sector. It brings a joy and pride within the people of Indian origin to see the prime minister coming and being welcomed in the White House tomorrow. There will be like 4,000 people, 4,000 to 5,000 Indo-Americans in the South alone. And so it also gives them opportunity for them to advocate with their member of Congress, with their members of Senate, to tell about the role of India and how India could be a strong ally and partner for US. So there are hundreds and thousands of people who now recently there are organizations like FIDS and others who have been advocating and going into the Capitol and on increasing India-US relationship, increasing the relationship between defense sector, being able to remove the CATSA law and supply defense weapons to India, including the fighter jets, which India definitely needs in order to balance with China. There are certain regulations which are prohibiting those transfer. So once the people of US play a major role in helping understand their member of Congress and Senate why it is important to have a stronger relationship with India, how India and US could be strong allies in the new world, emerging new global geopolitical world. And that is where the common people are very happy. And of course, they would love to see Prime Minister Modi. So, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Ajay, for joining us. But moving away from just the Indian diaspora, let's also look at how US is looking at Prime Minister Modi's visit.
India is a key and important partner, not just in the Indo-Pacific, but globally for the United States. In fact, it's one of the most defining bilateral relationships in the world now. And if you just look ahead, look at where things are going, not just in that region, but elsewhere, I think it's safe to say that it's going to be one of the most defining and important bilateral relationships well into the future. All I can tell you is that in President Biden's mind, India is not a second-tier anything. This visit will affirm the deep and close partnership between the United States and India and the warm bonds of family and friendship that link Americans and Indians together. The visit will strengthen our two countries' shared commitment to a free, open, prosperous, and secure Indo-Pacific, and our shared resolve to elevate our strategic technology partnership, including in defense, clean energy, and space. The leaders will discuss ways to further expand our educational exchanges and people-to-people ties, as well as our work together to confront common challenges from climate change to workforce development and health security. As we think about the future of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and building resilient supply chains for clean energy technologies, semiconductors, and other critical and emerging technology, countering climate change, the future of our workforces, and global health, energy, food security, there is no partner more consequential than India. Now, we're hosting India for an official state visit to put our cooperation on an inexorable trajectory as we support India's emergence as a great power that will be central to ensuring U.S. interests in the coming decades. After years of strengthening our ties, the United States-India partnership is deeper and more expansive than it has ever been in the past.
Right, and that's John Kirby speaking on how US is looking at Prime Minister Modi's visit to India, about deepening US-India relations. And these are the celebration shots that emerged as Prime Minister Modi landed in New York. You have celebrations outside the hotel where Prime Minister is expected shortly, as well as celebrations and waving of the Indian flag by the Indian diaspora as Prime Minister Modi arrived at the New York airport. There's lots of things lined up over the next few days, but in moments from now, as Prime Minister Modi will be reaching the hotel, he would also be meeting several leaders. And all of this is being seen extremely crucial by both the countries, particularly as they look at deepening their bilateral relations, particularly in the defense as well as tech segments. And there have been dialogues which have been going on for several months at several levels on different strategic partnerships. And this meeting between US President as well as Indian Prime Minister is being seen very, very closely, not only by the Indian diaspora or the US and India as nations, but also by world leaders across the globe. This also comes at a very crucial time for the geopolitical challenges that the world is facing, whether it be with respect to the challenges emerging out of oil or even with Russia and the Ukraine war that has been going on. The economic crisis that several parts of the world seem to be staring at, and the forecast being very grim for the world over. Ajay Jain Bhuturia, who is the Indian American community leader, joins us right now again. Ajay, Prime Minister Modi shortly to arrive at the hotel where he will be meeting certain leaders. Now, how do you all look at this meeting that is going to happen? You know, Elon Musk, who's of course looking for a market in India, he's looking, there has been raking which has been going on to zero in where should his production manufacturing center be set up in India, and that's going to be extremely big for India. But there's also an interesting angle to this. This meeting also comes as he's taken over Twitter. So how are you looking at this?
Well, I think it's very exciting. The Tesla factory, which manufactures the Tesla cars, is almost 4 miles away from where I live in Fremont. So it's wonderful to see Prime Minister Modi meeting Elon Musk. I think on the Tesla side, if we look at this, will be a great opportunity for Tesla to enter the market by setting up their manufacturing, possibly setting up their manufacturing facility in India to manufacture some of its cars as per India to support the Indian market, which is one of the largest markets. So far, Tesla has been able to penetrate in the China market and deliver cars there. So I'm sure Elon is looking at the opportunity over there. And on the Twitter side, I think Elon will have some complaints around the regulations or around the media and the control around communication on the Twitter side. So those discussions will come up in that on the freedom of the speech related items. But overall, it will be a great opportunity for India to bring Tesla manufacturing into India in partnerships so that will create thousands of jobs in India, as well as gives the more electric vehicles into India.
Ajay, give us a sense of these 20 leaders from different segments that Prime Minister Modi will be meeting in, say, hours from now. How does the Indian diaspora interact with anything in association with them? What is the Indian diaspora's relation with them?
So the Indian diaspora, of course, I mean, like if you look at Parag Agarwal, he was leading Twitter at one point of time. He's no longer leading Twitter. I mean, so among these the conversations which Prime Minister Modi will have, the diaspora is connected to each and every of those people whom the Prime Minister is going to meet, or their organizations, or they're driving their organization. Even in Tesla, some of the heads of the key engineering and other divisions are the people of India. So it's great to see that. I'm sure they will bring Elon will bring with them their Indian counterparts into this discussion. Same thing. I know my friend Vivek Lal, who is with the CEO of the Atomic Energy, and I hear through the media, not from him, but through the media, that India is going to sign up getting 30 latest technology drones from Atomic Energy, which will help in the Ladakh region to counter China's aggression. So those are areas in meeting certain scientists and for looking towards artificial cooperation and artificial intelligence, looking certain additional technology transfer beyond General Motors transfer, which is going to happen. And so I think the diaspora is looking forward to this conversation and learning more about as they unfold.
Right. In fact, Prime Minister Modi seems to has tweeted right now. And if you could just zoom into it, that's the tweet that Prime Minister Modi has put in as he has landed in New York City. Right. An interesting note to begin on his journey, as he was welcomed with much celebrations at the airport itself. So Prime Minister Modi has tweeted his arrival, which marks some extremely packed sessions, as it were, with not only community leaders and sector leaders from different sectors across the United States, also Indians who have Indian origin citizens who have contributed massively in the United States, but also in terms of some very, very key meetings, including with US President Joe Biden on deepening bilateral ties in defense as well as tech sector. Let's just quickly take a short break.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360,
Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right, and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right, and center with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360,
Gadget Love.
Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadgets.
Prime Minister Modi has landed at New York. He's been welcomed at the airport. Celebrations are underway in different parts of New York, including outside the hotel where Prime Minister Modi is expected shortly, and will start a series of meetings with leaders from different sectors across the United States, including Elon Musk of Tesla and Twitter. We'll keep bringing you all the details, but let's just quickly get reactions on how people across different segments are really looking at this very, very key visit by Prime Minister Modi. It's his first state visit to the United States, but also a very rare privilege, as it were. But it's not just that. In fact, he is the first Indian Prime Minister to be addressing the US Joint Congress session for a second consecutive time. And that is also reflective of how the US is looking at relations with India. Many are calling this a turning point in terms of the bilateral relations with India and US. I'm being joined also by Anand Ahuja right now, who is attorney at the law. He is New York-based Indian-American leader. Also, Ajay Jain Bhutoria has been with us for a while now. He is the Indian-American community leader as well. Anand Ahuja, to you first. Prime Minister Modi has arrived in New York. Series of meetings that are expected, but how do you look at Prime Minister's visit to the New York with a state invitation, as it were?
As you very rightly said, this is a turning point in Indo-US relationship, again, as very rightly you said, Modi is probably the only Indian leader to address joint session of Congress consecutively for the second time. Obviously, enthusiasm is very high, not only in the Indian community here, but all over the world, wherever the Indians are, because it's a matter of pride for all of us Indians. In New York, especially because Modi has arrived today in New York. So New York is basically more excited. Modi is coming to New York, and then from New York, he's to go to Washington, D.C. There's a huge welcome reception at the White House by not only by the United States government, but huge Indian diaspora is going to be there on Thursday morning to welcome Prime Minister Modi.
Right. In fact, Anand Ahuja, what is also very important to be seen, and this question goes to both of you, not everything is very rosy at a time when this meeting is taking place. One of the sectors that India and US are looking at deepening their ties is in the tech sector, and world over, including in the United States as well as in India, there are already people being turned down. There are people being asked to leave their jobs. They are being sacked because of major challenges in this tech industry. There's an economic slowdown which is being seen in some parts of the world. Anand Ahuja, not a very easy time for Indian American or Indian diaspora, particularly in the tech industry. They may be also sitting at the edge of their seats.
To be honest with you, I don't agree with you what you just stated. Irrespective of whether the economy goes up or down in the United States, tech industry is likely to grow. And as everybody knows in the world, the tech industry is dominated by and large by Indians. So Indians will always be in demand that every day new technology is coming up. Till I believe a couple of years back, nobody heard of AI, nobody heard of ChatGPT, those kind of technologies. Now, every day we see that new technology is coming in the market. So I don't agree with you when you say that market is not good. Or to be honest with you, I'm a very optimistic person, and I believe that Indian, especially in the tech industry, will always dominate United States market as well as other parts of the world.
Right. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Indians there have always dominated this sector, but the challenge perhaps is within the sector and not alone for Indian diaspora they're alone. But we'll get back to you, Mr. Ajay, as well as Mr. Anand. But let me just quickly go over to my colleague Maha Siddiqui. Maha, moments from now, Prime Minister is expected at the hotel where you are. Maha, this meeting, of course, focusing on the defense and tech sector, deepening the ties in both of these sectors. And both of these sectors are also extremely crucial in today's geopolitical setting. One, there is a Russia-Ukraine war which is going on. There's China's aggression being very closely watched by many across the world. But also in terms of the tech sector, not everything is very hunky-dory as some may say. There are massive layoffs which are happening in this sector as well world over.
Well, as far as the tech sector is concerned, both India and the United States want to forge closer ties. And under the tech sector, we have seen the announcement of ISET, that is the initiative on critical and emerging technology by India and the United States last year by President Biden and Prime Minister Modi on the sidelines of the Quad Summit. That partnership is already being taken forward. Earlier this year, when the US Commerce Secretary G.R. Raimondo was in India, along with Piyush Goyal, they announced a step further under this initiative as an initiative on partnering on semiconductors. Now, this is going to be critical as far as technology is concerned, because semiconductors, the small chips, are part of electronic gadgets, of bank ATMs, internet itself, all powered by that, and the automobile industry as well, which we saw disruption in during the COVID-19 pandemic because of the supply chains being disrupted. Largely, the semiconductors are concentrated with a few big companies, and one of the biggest that holds the largest chunk is in Taiwan, TSMC. And therefore, what we see is the need of the hour is for better collaboration on the tech front for both sides to get together as they believe for creating a more robust and resilient supply chain of semiconductors. In fact, Sneha, from what I've learned from my sources is that we can expect some big announcement there as well. In terms of Micron, some big announcement could be made, whether it's setting up of a manufacturing unit in India or otherwise. Those nitty-gritties and details are to be worked out, but there is a huge buzz that that announcement could also come forth on the 22nd of June. So yes, tech is a big area of collaboration. Also, tech is an area where in Silicon Valley, if you see the tech hub of America, it is largely powered by Indian Americans. Indian Americans also CEOs of some of the top tech companies too. So clearly the American side understands the footprint that the Indians or people of Indian origin or diaspora have on the tech industry, but how should it translate into having more resilient supply chains, and in fact India also benefiting from, of course, its own people who are powering the Silicon Valley here, from their understanding and innovations. That partnership is likely to be strengthened.
Right, Maha. Prime Minister Modi should be expected at the hotel where you are shortly from now. Of course, you have been showing us and telling us about the massive security arrangements around. But has the Indian diaspora movement, at least around you, increased or decreased?
No, they are still very much around here, and of course there are much more than these people. These are only like a small group of people who've gathered here outside. There are about 150 to 200 people inside the hotel is what we believe, standing in the corridors to wave at the Prime Minister. Obviously, they will not have a chance to have he can't have a personal appointment with everyone. But since they'll be in closer proximity than these people who are standing outside, they can expect maybe a word or two with the Prime Minister when he's going to his room. We are expecting now the Prime Minister perhaps to arrive in some time from now at the hotel. We have been telling you, Sneha, that the security has cordoned off this entire stretch of this road there leading up to the New York Palace Hotel where the Prime Minister will be staying, and the Indian diaspora outside the hotel has been asked to step across the road where we are, where the media has also in fact been asked to stay in a particular designated area. The Indian American community is also here, many of them holding American and Indian flags in their hands. They hope to wave that once the Prime Minister reaches here, and most of them probably will only get a glimpse of the Prime Minister and then leave because that's all that they really can from across the road. So, Sneha, that's the situation at the moment over here.
Right, Maha Siddiqui reporting from New York. Thank you, bringing you all the details. Shortly from now, Prime Minister Modi expected at the hotel where he'll also kickstart a series of meetings, celebrations outside the hotel, as well as people lined up to get a glimpse of Prime Minister Modi even inside the hotel. But for now, let's just quickly slip into a short break.
NDTV is undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change, and it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse.
Hello and welcome back. Prime Minister Modi has landed in New York and is shortly expected in the hotel. Celebrations have already broken out. This is a very important visit by Prime Minister Modi. It is just the third state visit of a leader under the Joe Biden administration, that is since Joe Biden became the US president, and that was also reflective of how important is India for US in the bilateral relations. There's also several meetings which have been planned over the next 3 days. Prime Minister Modi will kickstart these meetings with one-on-ones with thought leaders, as has been communicated with by officials. These are leaders from different segments, including scientists, musicians, singers, as well as those from other industries like Elon Musk, who owns not only Tesla but also the Twitter. And let's just quickly listen into reactions that have been coming in from outside the hotel where Prime Minister Modi is expected shortly.
We are totally proud of how well he is working as the best Prime Minister of India. He has brought our value of Indian diaspora such high that we're very proud to say we're Indian. And he is from Gujarat, so we're very proud to have that part as well. So we can always say is we're from the same state that Narendra Modi ji is from.
It's a huge impact because ever since Modi sir is here as a PM, when people meet you in New York or anywhere, they greet you with respect, which weren't there before. Before we were considered third country, now we consider somebody level to Americas.
I find that this is wonderful what is happening in terms of India and US having a connection so that Indians can be present over here. I think it is amazing always when we have our Prime Minister come over here and be welcomed in the way that is being welcomed. So I think it's fantastic. Yes.
And Maha Siddiqui joins us again. Maha, so you have been covering several such visits for a very long time. If I may just take the liberty of asking you, Maha, since Prime Minister Modi is expected any moment from now, for the next 3 days, which is that one or two events that you're really looking forward to cover as a reporter?
Sorry, Sneha, I was a bit distracted because the Prime Minister is about to come here. Can you please repeat your question?
Maha, I don't intend to throw you on the back foot, but having covered so many events on these lines and several such important meetings, over the next 3 days, what is that one or two meeting that you really look forward to cover as a reporter?
Sneha, the biggest meeting in this visit is, of course, between President Biden and Prime Minister Modi. Now, they have met several times in the past as well. But why this is important is because of the big takeaways we are expecting from this bilateral meeting. So this is not just going to be a meeting where they will talk to each other, discuss the current regional and global matters and, just diplomatically in the ambit of diplomacy, just talk about issues and concepts. There will be concrete outcomes as well in this meeting in the defense sector, in the technology sector, perhaps even something in climate change, which are all important and some of them very critical at the moment for humanity as well. I think that is why this visit is important, and that particular meeting is going to be important as well. And of course also the Prime Minister's address at the US Congress, though several times in the past, other prime ministers have also had that honor. Prime Minister Modi will be making his second address to the joint Congress, but it'll be just interesting to see what are the points that he makes to the US Congress this time around, and also to have a feel of their parliament. I have covered the Indian Parliament, the Rajya Sabha, for a very long time. Just to draw comparisons, how journalists in the press gallery, what is it that they're allowed to cover, not cover? Are they similar? Are they different? All that is going to be something that personally I would look forward to as well, covering. Also, Sneha, while we are at it, let me quickly once again take you through the mood over here. As you can see, there's a lot of curiosity now because this entire area has been cordoned off. So you can see a lot more people have gathered. It's almost, lunchtime here. This is the time when, in fact, it's past lunch already. It's 2 p.m. over here. People around this area, also some of the people I just spoke to, because they work around this area, they said they also came down just to have a look. But you can see a large number of Indian American community, the diaspora, also gathered here. You are just going to get a glimpse of the Prime Minister from so far.
कितनी प्रेस्टीज की बात है कि एक ग्लिम्स भी देखने को मिल जाएगी।
अरे और इतने
आप लोग अंदर नहीं जा पाए?
इतने नजदीक से, अरे हमारा
वॉशिंगटन के लिए भी
हमारा सौभाग्य है कि इतनी इंडिया में और दूसरे कई जगह तो ये भी मौका नहीं मिलता।
अच्छा, तो आप लोग सेटिस्फाइड है कि अक्रॉस द रोड ही प्राइम मिनिस्टर को एक बार देख लें?
एक बार देख लें, एक झलक देखने के लिए आए हैं, और अगर दिख जाएगी तो बहुत अच्छा होगा।
I understand that there are quite a few people inside, ma'am. Do you have any idea of the number of people?
Passes, and they are like, I think 60-70 people inside, and they have passes and they have certain designation and assigned people, so we cannot go inside, but I'm so happy I'm here. I've been waiting for 3 hours and I can wait and wait. I just want to see him and I want to greet him, and that's it.
All right.
I'm so proud of him and I'm so proud to be Indian. Bhartiya.
Absolutely. I mean, it's great to hear these comments from you all, proud to be an Indian there. How do you see, how do you all see creating a connect between India and America? Because people play a big role in creating bonhomie between countries.
Right. Go ahead.
India and America, you see, we have one of the biggest CEOs have been from India here now. You take any multinational. So the way India and US are now getting interdependence is one of the most important factors for both the countries. And I believe Modi ji is very instrumental in getting this bonding going great guns. And the American politics and politicians and people do recollect and recognize India as a solid partner for them for future and a long, long future.
Do you think that आपसे पूछूंगी, क्या आपको लगता है कि over the years जो Indian Americans का American society को contribution है, उसकी वजह से that is one of the driving factors why India has also been recognized as a country that can play a bigger partner with the US?
Absolutely, because if you see today, like in technology, like Microsoft, Google, Adobe, in Sabhi ke CEO are Indian, and even in Silicon Valley, like Khosla, they have contributed so much to the technology of this country, and they can play an important role in moving India still by leaps and bounds to another height, and we feel that they are doing pretty good job, and like industries in Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, Mumbai, all places, and like in Gujarat, a new semiconductor chip factory, TSC, is coming up. So these are the things we need for future of our country.
UK, sir, UK, United Kingdom, describes the People Connect as a living bridge. आपको लगता है ये डिस्क्रिप्शन एप्ट है किसी भी 2 कंट्रीज के लिए और अमेरिका और इंडिया के बीच में भी?
Sure. NRI is a living bridge, right? That's why NRI said some kind of a contribution there to developing the country, right? So whatever they invest there, whatever they do, they go visit there, and whatever they spend there, that is a big contribution to the India.
Right. Thank you all of you for speaking with us, and in a short while from now we'll be seeing the Prime Minister arrive here. The view is pretty much blocked now because people are just waiting to see him. There's a lot of media as well. But this entire stretch, and my camera person will be able to just show it to you, this entire stretch has in fact been cordoned off.
Maha, very interesting details and reactions right from New York where you are. But Maha, also interesting to see that from 2014 to 2023, when the first International Yoga Day was announced, to what Prime Minister is going to be part of in few hours from now in New York itself when it comes to yoga. Many talking about yoga diplomacy and about how India is establishing itself as a world leader with even soft powers, as it were, including yoga diplomacy. Maha, if you can hear us. We seem to have lost the line of Maha Siddiqui. I of course have Anand Ahuja right now with me, who is an Indian American leader, part of the Indian diaspora in US as well. So Anand Ahuja, if I may ask you this question, yoga, often referred to as a gift of India to the world. But it's even beyond that. Now it's also very, very closely tied up to how India is portraying itself as a global leader and the political narratives that are being built around it.
Yes, basically, I personally believe that it's not just one sector or one particular aspect that has to be taken into consideration. It's a combination of various factors. Even when we talk of IT, it's not just IT. I think we should talk about Indian professionals, Indian physicians. They have contributed a lot in this country. Likewise, when you talk about yoga, yoga was actually popular even before Modi came into the picture, especially in the Western world. If you see Maharishi, Mahesh Yogi, and those kind of Rajneesh, they brought yoga to this country. The only thing is that when you linked yoga with diplomacy, then we say credit goes to Modi. So Modi actually has made yoga more of an international diplomacy part than just as a yoga part. So there are various factors that contribute to better relationship between India and USA or India and other countries in the world. The geopolitical aspect is there, there's the economic aspect is there, and we should not forget when we talk about what is happening in India vis-a-vis India's relationship with other countries. The credit actually goes to the initially to Nehru and Nehru's policies. These IT sectors and medical schools and engineering colleges, they were actually vision of Pandit Nehru. If you see the economic reforms, that actually credit goes to Sardar Manmohan Singh when he was finance minister of Narasimha Rao. So it's basically efforts of various administrations in the country that we are seeing the results today.
Right. Interesting observations there, Mr. Anand Ahuja. In fact, what would be your key takeaway from what you're expecting over the next 3 days? If the Indian diaspora, of the way they are looking at this meeting between Prime Minister Modi and US President Joe Biden, what would be your key focus or key takeaway as part of the Indian diaspora? What are you really looking at?
I personally believe that besides the trade and investment issues, which will be discussed at length, and media is giving a lot of coverage to that, but there are, in my personal opinion, there are going to be some hidden agendas also. And one of the hidden agenda could be, at least on the Biden administration part, there is an expectation that Modi government can play a role of mediator in Ukraine-Russia war also. So to what extent that will be conveyed to Modi, and to what extent Modi will be willing to actually involve himself in US-Ukraine war's mediation role, that is yet to be seen. But it's not just that Indian diaspora is thrilled that Modi is coming to the country and is a great leader, and just let's enjoy that moment. But we have to look into what actually is going to be in future USA relationship with India, or India's relationship with the other countries.
Right. That's certainly being a very important point that you're mentioning. In fact, this meeting, which is expected between Indian Prime Minister as well as the US President, is set to have some extremely key takeaways that may even be very important in framing how US and India really look at each other, and the close collaborations over several decades to come. Now, meanwhile, these are the visuals that you're seeing on the screen of Prime Minister Modi arriving outside the hotel in New York from the having landed at the airport. So these are the first visuals that you're getting of Prime Minister Modi arriving at the hotel in New York. And this area has been completely cordoned off for security reasons. There are Indian people from the Indian diaspora who have lined up on the other side of this road that is not really visible in this particular video, but the Indians in the Indian diaspora lining up outside the hotel to welcome Prime Minister Modi. Even celebrations that had begun a while ago as Prime Minister Modi had landed at the New York airport, but heavy security as expected outside this hotel, and Prime Minister Modi has arrived at this hotel, will be entering that hotel. Inside the hotel also, as my colleague Maha Siddiqui was reporting, there are several people, several Indians or Indian Americans or Indians or those part of the Indian diaspora who have lined up even inside the hotel to get a glimpse of Prime Minister Modi as he would be heading and then very shortly just starting off his one-on-one meetings with different leaders from across different sectors in US. Now, over the next 3 days, there are some very key meetings that Prime Minister Modi is going to be part of. But after his one-on-ones with industry leaders, whether it be from the science, tech or music world, he's also going to be part of the UN celebrations of the International Yoga Day. He's also going to be performing yoga, and that is also going to be closely watched. Several leaders have made some very interesting statements on how they look at India, India's contribution to the world in terms of yoga, and also how yoga has been part of daily lives of several people across several countries, and this being one of the soft powers that India would be looking at sending extremely strong message across the world in terms of being a global leader.
Maybe they didn't allow you.
And I'm also being joined by Atman Trivedi, who is a former Senior Director for Policy and Global Markets, the US Department of Commerce, India and Asia expert. Thank you very much, Mr. Atman Trivedi, for joining us. Mr. Trivedi, we'll get back to you, Mr. Trivedi, in a bit, but I'm also being joined by Maha Siddiqui right now. Maha, Prime Minister Modi, as is being seen in these visuals, is now even waving at the Indian diaspora.
You see the visuals over here. Prime Minister Modi is here with... Sneha, the Prime Minister is right right here, and you can see him in our cameras as well. He stepped out of the hotel to meet the Indian diaspora that has been waiting here to meet him. It's a little unexpected because a lot of people were standing inside to meet him. One would have hardly expected him to, sir, 1 second, to be outside here and meet him, but the Prime Minister anyway has stepped out and he is trying to meet with the people. You will be able to see the Prime Minister walking up here on our cameras. He is just meeting with the Indian diaspora here. There you can just get a glimpse of that along with the security here, and just waving to all the people there, all the crowd that has gathered outside his hotel here at the all right, you can just have a... So Prime Minister Modi is here meeting the Indian diaspora, and you can get a very clear glimpse of the Prime Minister over here. Sneha?
Right, Maha, very interesting moment there, unexpected that Prime Minister Modi has in fact walked out towards the Indian diaspora that was lined up on the opposite side of the hotel, where even Maha Siddiqui, my colleague, was reporting from, and he's waved and he spent few minutes with them for the Indian diaspora that was waiting out in the afternoon in the United States. This would be quite a big moment, Maha. In fact, these are the visuals.
Yes, absolutely. The people here are pretty ecstatic, ma'am. You were right there. You said that just waving to the Prime Minister will be good enough for you, but
we couldn't wave because he was surrounded by people. We couldn't wave. Like,
but he was right.
Amazing experience.
But he was right here.
Amazing experience. Amazing experience. Can't believe it.
So Sneha, I got it right there from the people who are gathered here. They are expressing their views. They were also pretty taken by surprise that the Prime Minister walked out over here and met with the people, at least waved to them. Some of them who were right next to the barricade they were quite close to him and could in fact get a very good glimpse of him. But some of them, as that lady there said, that because he got surrounded by a lot of people, she was not able to see him that clearly.
Right, Maha. Very interesting moment there for the Indian diaspora. Of course, Prime Minister Modi has now made his way inside the hotel, where there are, these are the shots that you're getting from inside the hotel, where Prime Minister Modi has already arrived, and a lot of Indians, a lot of members of the Indian diaspora also lined up inside the hotel to be able to wave at Prime Minister Modi, to be able to get glimpses of him. These are the shots of Prime Minister Modi as he enters the hotel in New York, kickstarting his 3-day visit, lined up with very key meetings with several leaders, including, of course, US President Joe Biden, who has also extended a state invite to Prime Minister Modi. So this is Prime Minister Modi's first state visit to the United States, also being seen as a very important event, as we have been mentioning that he's perhaps the only third international leader under the Joe Biden administration to be accorded a state invite. So there are several meetings which are lined up, and very critical decisions of partnership and deepening their engagement, particularly between US and India, also on cards. These are not just discussions that are likely to be held, but in fact there are certain decisions, very concrete decisions that are likely to be brought out by the end of the meeting with Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, which is also being watched very closely by other world leaders as well. This, of course, coming at very important time, very interesting geopolitical scenario across the world, as it were, whether it be the US-Russia war, the Ukraine-Russia war that is already continuing, or it be the Indo-Pacific challenges that are being seen, particularly with what many are being called very aggressive moves by China. But in terms of the tech partnerships, which is being seen as very strategic and important partnerships to be furthered by India and US, whether it be the manufacturing of semiconductors or microchips, all of these being very, very closely spoken about and will be part of discussions or some very concrete decisions that are likely to come out. These are the visuals that are coming in again of the Indian diaspora interacting with Prime Minister Modi, this time inside the hotel where Prime Minister Modi has arrived. It's been almost 2 hours, almost 1 hour 45 minutes since Prime Minister Modi landed at New York for the very important visit that is also being seen as a turning point between India and US bilateral relations. These are the shots that you're getting of the Indian diaspora that are gathered inside the hotel to greet Prime Minister Modi, welcome him and get glimpses of him, selfies as could have been imagined being clicked as Prime Minister interacts with them. Maha, so Maha Siddiqui returns to us right now. Maha, so it's interesting. Not only was it a surprise visit for at least the Indian diaspora that was lined outside the hotel, Prime Minister Modi actually spending quite a few minutes interacting with the diaspora inside the hotel as well. They would have just imagined to get few glimpses of Prime Minister Modi, but Prime Minister Modi very clearly engaging with them. He's even giving some of them autographs. He's obliged to selfies. He's literally waiting and interacting with the diaspora there, Maha.
Yes, absolutely, and that was expected, that those who are inside the hotel and in close proximity might get a chance to exchange a word or two with the Prime Minister, but the diaspora that was standing outside, they were just expecting to wave to the Prime Minister, but he came quite close, very close to the barricading across the street and actually waved to them at very close quarters. Some, in fact, were able to shake hands with him as well. So they are quite excited about the fact that they were able to not just see the Prime Minister, but were able to, in some sense, engage slightly more than they expected. Inside the hotel, a sizable crowd of about 100. I mean, there are varying figures that people are giving us. Some say that there are about 100. Some others in the morning told us that there are about 150 there lining up in the corridors, and they are trying to just get a glimpse of the Prime Minister and say, wave to him, or just get a word or two with him when he's going inside. And that's exactly, I think, what's happening right now inside Sneha, because we are outside, so we do not know exactly what is playing out right now inside the hotel, which is New York Palace Hotel, where the Prime Minister is staying. From now on to about, it's already 2:30 p.m. here. 4 o'clock roughly is when his meetings with the diaspora will start. With the CEOs and the other 24 people that he's going to be meeting. The list of some of those, as we have shared, which include Elon Musk as well. That meeting will start shortly now. The Prime Minister will be meeting all of those people in just a bit. Yes, that's starting from 4 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. is where it has all been slotted.
Right, Maha. In fact, Maha, from Prime Minister Modi has arrived at the hotel. Of course, he's engaged with the Indian diaspora. He's treated them by just, interacting with them, allowing them to take those selfies. But in moments from now, I presume those meetings with the leaders from different sectors is also going to begin, whether it be Elon Musk of Tesla and Twitter, or even others from different backgrounds, whether they be scientists or even people from the music world.
Yes, those meetings are going to start in another hour and a half from now. 4 p.m. American time is when he will be meeting about 24 people, as I pointed out. A range of people from CEOs, artists, academicians to people involved, experts in the healthcare sector, a wide range of people that he's going to meet between today 4 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. That's the slotted time. Of course, those meetings can also extend by a little bit because the numbers are quite huge over here. 24 of such people that he's likely to meet, out of which some of the prominent ones are Elon Musk. I guess everybody's eyes will most keenly be trained on his meeting with Elon Musk, who's himself become at the moment quite controversial and constantly in news as ever since he became the owner of Twitter. So there is interest in Elon Musk as well, and therefore his meeting with the Prime Minister is something that will be watched out for. Apart from that, there are at least two people of Indian origin, Falguni Shah as well as Chandrika Tandon, who the Prime Minister will also be meeting among the 24 people. There's an astrophysicist, D. Garce Tyson as well, that the Prime Minister will be meeting today, apart from some investors as well, who he will interact with here in his hotel. This is the New York Palace, where the meetings have been lined up between 4 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. today, US time.
Right. Thank you, Maha Siddiqui, for those details. I'm also being joined right now by Atman Trivedi, who is a former Senior Director for Policy, Global Markets, US Department of Commerce, India and Asia expert. Thank you, Atman Trivedi, and sorry, apologize for keeping you wait so long. But Atman Trivedi, Prime Minister Modi has arrived in New York. He's already reached the hotel. A very important visit to mark the US and India's bilateral ties, as it were. What would be the key takeaways that you are really looking at this point?
Well, thank you for having me. It was exciting to see all of the images of the Prime Minister engaging with the diaspora community, the throngs of people in and outside of his hotel in New York City. I think apart from these kind of images, these important visual moments that are created, we'll see what I hope to be substantial deliverables. Both sides have been spending many hours together to negotiate over what they hope will be very serious and substantive outcomes. And that should be reflected in the joint statement that they both put out in a few days' time. So substance to match all of these wonderful moments that we're witnessing already.
Right. That's also perhaps very interesting is the entire geopolitical scenario in which this meeting is really happening. Mr. Trivedi, what would you say about this, as whether it be Russia-Ukraine war, whether it be the challenges in the Indo-Pacific with respect to what many are seeing as a very aggressive China? Both US and India would have a lot at stake.
There will be a tremendous amount at stake. This visit takes place among significant geopolitical uncertainty. The Prime Minister and the President will no doubt speak to US-China relations following Secretary Blinken's visit to China, his first as Secretary of State. There's been a lot of tension in the Indo-Pacific region associated with some of China's activities. And so that issue will be something that will be discussed. Russia is always a topic of conversation. Its activities in Ukraine will also be something to discuss. And then India is consistent with its growing role in the world, its leadership of the global South. India, of course, is chairing the G20 this year. And so India's G20 presidency and the Prime Minister's ambitions will also be front and center as the two leaders discuss global geopolitics together.
Right. Important points being made there by you, Mr. Trivedi. In fact, on a side note, as it were, with what you are seeing, Prime Minister Modi's visit to US, the kind of imagery that is being generated, the kind of appreciation, welcome that is expected even in the United Nations, the kind of interaction with the Indian diaspora, how do you really look at all of this translate into advantage for the Indian, not only the Indian diaspora, but also the US and Indian citizens?
It's an important question because Indian and US citizens, of course, are the center of the relationship. They're the glue that holds it together. And the two governments just try to keep up with the dynamism, the ambition, the innovation of the peoples in both societies. And the Indian American diaspora is the bridge that binds those two societies. It's only fitting and appropriate that they're going to be featuring center stage alongside the two governments and their leaders. This relationship is based on the people in both countries, and a lot of what is accomplished in terms of policy issues like the civil nuclear deal, for example, that has been accomplished with the hard work, the dedication behind the scenes of the diaspora community. And so, you know, the people of our two democracies are essential. They're the engine to this partnership.
Right, Mr. Trivedi, I'm also being joined by Mr. Anand Ahuja. Again, Anand Ahuja, you saw the visuals that really emerged, whether it be from outside the hotel as well as inside the hotel, very warm visuals of Prime Minister waving and engaging with the Indian diaspora. You saw him allow them take selfies and give autographs as well. This perhaps also setting the tone and tenor for what really is expected over the next 3 days.
Yes, as I said earlier also, that there is a lot of excitement amongst Indians living in the United States. And it's not only in New York and Washington, D.C. that people, they were awaiting for Modi to come to United States. There's excitement all over United States. And if Prime Minister Modi decides to visit any other state, I'm sure that he will get the same kind of welcome as well as excitement from the Indian community in those cities also. So there's no doubt about that Prime Minister Modi is an undisputable leader, not only of India, but at this moment commands a lot of respect all over the world. Proof of the pudding is in eating. I'm not just talking that India just being holding presidency of G20 this time, but if you see, even without holding that kind of position, India today commands a lot of respect all over the world.
Right, that's very relevant to have said that. Atman Trivedi, you were talking about some very tangible deliverables that should be given out at the end of this meeting between Prime Minister Modi as well as US President Joe Biden. Defense and tech sectors being two of the sectors at least where India and US are looking at deepening these ties. Are you also looking at perhaps any other surprise element?
The defense and tech sectors are going to be central to the conversation, as you said. The work together on critical and emerging technologies, issues like semiconductors, AI, quantum, will be featured. There have been a few defense deals that we've seen in the news. The possibility of an announcement on jet engines for India's military aircraft. The possibility of defense items in UAVs. There's been discussion on that front too, but watch to see if there are breakthroughs in other areas, like on health security, for example. Both countries are affected by changes in our climate. Have they found new ways to partner together on environmental preservation and in response to climate change? The two countries can be doing more together on battery technologies, critical minerals, resilience, and security of that supply chain. So watch to see for elements of progress in these areas. On issues that have historically, the US and India have had their differences, for instance, like trade, we should be watching to see if there are signs that the two sides are coming to closer together in some respects. We discussed earlier how people-to-people ties are at the center of the relationship. Consistent with that, are there breakthroughs in areas like health, education, visas that allow greater connectivity between our peoples in the tech and other sectors? Are there breakthroughs that have emerged, renewed commitments by both sides? There's been discussion about the possible opening of new U.S. consulates in India. That will be tremendous in terms of closer U.S. government engagement with the people of India and trying to facilitate that connectivity between our peoples. Is there movement on education, for instance? The First Lady of the United States is a big believer in the importance of vocational training and skills development here at community colleges in the U.S. Are there opportunities to compare notes between the two governments and advance learnings that can assist both societies, both governments in terms of educating their people and developing the skills necessary to be competitive in the 21st century?
Right. In fact, Anand Ahuja, would you like to add to that? Perhaps a lot more areas of collaboration and focus even available within the subsectors, as it were, of defense and tech, as Mr. Trivedi mentioned about, say, vocational training, you know, where priorities for the two countries and looking at how they both can come together for those priorities.
Yes, I personally believe that everything revolves around geopolitical situation. Particularly if you see now Saudi Arabia and Iran coming together and the emerging nexus amongst China, Saudi Arabia, Iran, North Korea, Russia. So this is a totally new geopolitical game now. So whether you take it from defense perspective or from purely geopolitical point of view, those are the, I believe, more glaring issues. And international terrorism, which also basically emerges because of this geopolitical equation. So I believe that besides trade and defense kind of deals, there will be discussion, as I mentioned earlier, also what's going on between Russia and Ukraine and what's going on amongst these other countries, as I mentioned, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, China, and North Korea. Now, both North Korea as well as Iran, they are on the verge of developing nuclear capabilities. So this is not an alarming situation for the United States, but it's for the whole of the world.
Right. Thank you, Anand Ahuja. In fact, just to either of you who would want to really take this question, and on a very light note, this whole excitement of the Indian diaspora, how is this being looked at by those in the US?
Oh, as I said earlier also, yes, people, they are very excited, and it's a positive sign, positive outlook. And it's not only just because we are people, they have high expectations, but on the ground reality point of view also, This is a good opportunity not only for India, not only for United States, but as I said, that for a new geopolitical equation.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead, Mr. Trivedi.
Thank you. Just to add what Anand was saying, as a second generation Indian American, it's very gratifying to see the hard work, the contributions of Indians who came here in the late 60s, 1970s, and 80s, really being recognized. Indians are an essential part of the American story. And they're making important contributions both to their adopted home as well as to India. And I think that's going to be recognized at events like the state dinner and really celebrated. It's a great story for both democracies. And so long as we keep our focus on the people, I think the future of this relationship is incredibly bright.
If I'm permitted to add quickly, I will add just one more point here. I personally believe that both India and Pakistan, we got independence on the same day, 75 years ago. If we compare where India stands today and where Pakistan stands today, and I personally believe that credit goes to India's visionary leaders, the kind of leaders India has produced, everything, the whole credit goes to them. And again, as I said, that Rome was not built in a day. So it took 75 years for Indians to reach to this particular point.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Atman Trivedi and Anand Ahuja, for joining us. It's a very important moment in India-US bilateral relations. It's also, the next 3 days are also going to be very closely watched, not only by the Indians and the US citizens or the Indian diaspora in US, but also world across, because this meeting also comes at extremely challenging geopolitical environment. What would be the key takeaways? What would be the crucial deliverables? These would be some things that we would be tracking very closely at NDTV. NDTV's Maha Siddiqui bringing you up and close with all the details at New York. For now, let's just quickly slip into a short break.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love. Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love. Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
Welcome back. Prime Minister Modi has been given a warm welcome in New York by the Indian diaspora as well as the US heads. In fact, when you talk about the Indian diaspora in the United States or the New York, they have been given quite a bit of a surprise. For the Indian diaspora waiting outside the hotel in New York, Prime Minister Modi actually just took a detour and went ahead and met them. He spent a few minutes with them, sending them into quite a frenzy. Later on, inside the hotel as well, he went and engaged with the Indian diaspora. You could see him see him give them autographs as well as allow some selfies. All of this happening inside the hotel. Well, inside the hotel, of course, this was expected, but the Indian diaspora at least waiting outside on the opposite side of the hotel where there was very strong security and this was absolutely unexpected. This interaction was a welcome surprise. Meanwhile, just before that, he was also given a warm welcome by the Indian diaspora at the New York airport. But this visit of Prime Minister Modi in United States is being seen as a turning point in the US as well as India bilateral relations. Some very key engagements expected over the next 3 days, particularly in the defense as well as in the tech sector. Let's just look at how the United States really is looking at this.
India is a key and important partner, not just in the Indo-Pacific, but globally for the United States. In fact, it's one of the most defining bilateral relationships in the world now. And if you just look ahead, look at where things are going, not just in that region, but elsewhere, I think it's safe to say that it's going to be one of the most defining and important bilateral relationships well into the future. All I can tell you is that in President Biden's mind, India is not a second-tier anything. This visit will affirm the deep and close partnership between the United States and India and the warm bonds of family and friendship that link Americans and Indians together. The visit will strengthen our two countries' shared commitment to a free, open, prosperous, and secure Indo-Pacific and our shared resolve to elevate our strategic technology partnership, including in defense, clean energy, and space. The leaders will discuss ways to further expand our educational exchanges and people-to-people ties, as well as our work together to confront common challenges from climate change to workforce development and health security.
And in an hour from now, Prime Minister Modi is set to meet several thought leaders from different sectors, whether it be Elon Musk or the astrophysicist Neil Tyson, as well as Grammy Award-winning Indian-American singer Falusha. But before all of this, here are the reactions from the Indian diaspora.
We are totally proud of how well he is working as the best Prime Minister of India. He has brought our value of Indian diaspora such high that we're very proud to say we're Indian. And he is from Gujarat, so we're very proud to have that part as well. So we can always say is we're from the same state that Narendra Modi ji is from.
It's a huge impact because ever since Modi sir is here as a PM, when people meet you in New York or anywhere, they greet you with respect, which weren't there before. Before we were considered third country. Now we consider somebody level to Americas.
I find that this is wonderful what is happening in terms of India and US having a connection so that Indians can be present over here. I think it is amazing always when we have our Prime Minister come over here and be welcomed in the way that is being welcomed. So I think it's fantastic. Yes.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shobh, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love. Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, Building a Blueprint for Climate Action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debate.
Prime Minister Modi has kick-started his 3-day mega US tour. He's been given a warm welcome by the Indian diaspora, and he also stopped for a sudden visit to at least those who were lined outside the hotel in New York. On 21st June, International Yoga Day, Prime Minister will lead the Yoga Day celebrations at the UN headquarters, a special celebration marking the 9 years after UN established Yoga Day on Prime Minister Modi's request. After the World Health Organization flagged 7 India-made syrups among 20 drugs linked to over 300 deaths globally, Union Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia said India follows a zero-tolerance policy on spurious medicines and several steps have been taken. The latest flashpoint between the West Bengal government and governor over an event to celebrate State Foundation Day at the Raj Bhavan, despite chief minister writing to the governor against it, saying partition was a traumatic, painful day. Against time as US and Canadian rescue teams are scrambling to search for a tourist submarine that went missing during a voyage to the Titanic shipwreck, with a British billionaire and Pakistani businessman among the 5 people on board. A shocking case from Andhra Pradesh where a 15-year-old girl ran away from an ashram accusing the seer of rape. He's arrested and had a previous case against him. Hello, I'm Sneha Koshi. Prime Minister Modi has reached New York, and this marks the beginning of his 3-day visit to US, which is being seen as a very crucial meeting for India and US bilateral relations, which is also focusing on several aspects, particularly for deepening the ties in defense as well as tech sectors. It's not just about discussions, but some very decisive decisions that are expected over the next few days, particularly after the meeting of Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. Prime Minister Modi this is his first state visit to the United States, and he is the first Indian to do it for the second time, to be addressing the US Joint Congress session. In fact, if you look at those who have been invited to address the Joint Congress session of the United States, it's just the 3rd invite to Prime Minister Modi among the international dignitaries under US President Joe Biden's presidency. My colleague Maha Siddiqui joins us at this point. Maha, Prime Minister Modi was given a very warm welcome by the Indian diaspora, whether it be at the airport or even outside the hotel and even inside the hotel for that matter. Prime Minister even managed to surprise them by engaging with them. Of course, inside the hotel that was expected, but he even went ahead to meet those who were lined up outside the hotel.
Yes, absolutely, and that was expected, that those who are inside the hotel and in close proximity might get a chance to exchange a word or two with the Prime Minister, but the diaspora that was standing outside, they were just expecting to wave to the Prime Minister, but he came quite close, very close to the barricading across the street, and actually waved to them at very close quarters. Some, in fact, were able to shake hands with him as well. So they are quite excited about the fact that they were able to not just see the Prime Minister, but were able to, in some sense, engage slightly more than they expected. Inside the hotel, a sizable crowd of about 100. I mean, there are varying figures that people are giving us. Some say that there are about 100. Some others in the morning told us that there are about 150 there lining up in the corridors, and they are trying to just get a glimpse of the Prime Minister and wave to him, or just get a word or two with him when he's going inside. And that's exactly, I think, what's happening right now inside, Sneha, because we are outside, so we do not know exactly what is playing out right now inside the hotel, which is New York Palace Hotel, where the Prime Minister is staying. From now on to about, it's already 2:30 p.m. here. 4 o'clock roughly is when his meetings with the diaspora will start. With the CEOs and the other 24 people that he's going to be meeting. The list of some of those, as we have shared, which include Elon Musk as well. That meeting will start shortly now. The Prime Minister will be meeting all of those people in just a bit. Yes, that's starting from 4 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. is where it has all been slotted.
Right. In fact, there were inside the hotel, the Indian diaspora that had gathered got quite a few minutes with Prime Minister Modi, and for many, this would set the tone and tenor of what to expect for the next few days. Let's just listen into the reactions that did come in from the Indian diaspora in New York.
We are totally proud of how well he is working as the best Prime Minister of India. He has brought our value of Indian diaspora such high that we're very proud to say we're Indian. And he is from Gujarat, so we're very proud to have that part as well. So we can always say is we're from the same state that Narendra Modi ji is from.
It's a huge impact because ever since Modi sir is here as a PM, when people meet you in New York or anywhere, they greet you with respect, which weren't there before. Before we were considered third country. Now we consider somebody level to Americas.
I find that this is wonderful what is happening in terms of India and US having a connection so that Indians can be present over here. I think it is amazing always when we have our Prime Minister come over here and be welcomed in the way that is being welcomed. So I think it's fantastic. Yes.
And from the first International Yoga Day in 2015 to 2023, yoga not only continues to be popular with the countries across the world, but is also turning to be a crucial diplomacy tool for India, what many are now calling yoga diplomacy. Here's a brief glimpse of how this journey has been.
Yoga unites. It unites body and mind, humanity and nature, and millions of people across the globe for whom it is a source of strength, harmony and peace. In a dangerous and divided world, the benefits of this ancient practice are particularly precious.
This message of unity of body and mind has been practiced across the world for decades. But yoga truly went global in 2015. After Prime Minister Narendra Modi's proposal to celebrate 21st June as the International Day of Yoga was adopted unanimously by 175 nations.
जब हम क्लाइमेट चेंज की बात करते हैं, हम होलिस्टिक हेल्थ केयर की बात करते हैं, हम प्रकृति के साथ जुड़ने की बात करते हैं, हम जब बैक टू बेसिक की बात करते हैं, तब मैं उस विषय पर आज विशेष रूप से आपसे एक बात कहना चाहता हूं। योग हमारी पुरातन पारंपरिक अमूल्य देन है। योग केवल व्यायाम भर न होकर अपने आप से तथा विश्व व प्रकृति के साथ तादात्म्य को प्राप्त करने का माध्यम है। यह हमारी जीवन शैली में परिवर्तन लाकर तथा हम में जागरूकता उत्पन्न करके जलवायु परिवर्तन से लड़ने में सहायक हो सकता है। आइए हम एक अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस को आरंभ करने की दिशा में कार्य करें।
Since then, world over, 21st June sees yoga enthusiasts collectively perform asanas across multiple time zones.
कि योग की जो तस्वीरें कुछ वर्ष पहले केवल घरों में आध्यात्मिक केंद्रों में दिखती थी, वो आज विश्व के कोने कोने से आ रही है। ये तस्वीरें आत्मिक बोध के विस्तार की तस्वीरें हैं। योग अब एक वैश्विक पर्व बन गया है। योग किसी व्यक्ति मात्र के लिए नहीं, संपूर्ण मानवता के लिए है।
In line with India's push for one earth, one family, one future, also the motto of India's G20 presidency, this year's International Day of Yoga theme is Yoga for Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. And to gauge its growing popularity, an international market research agency pegged the yoga market size at nearly $37,500 million in 2019. And it is projected to reach a whopping $66,226 million by the year 2027. But what makes this growth exceptional is the penetration of yoga. From homes to schools to corporate offices and yoga studios. Everyone is hitting the yoga mat to beat the stress and find a balanced and healthy way of life. From yoga as a fad to yoga as a global way of life, this perhaps is India's biggest contribution to the world today. Bureau Report, NDTV.
Time for a short break. On the other side, we'll bring you lots more.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Gadgets 360 is here to help you with all your tech needs.
Gadget 360, Gadget Love. Gadgets 360, Gadgets Love.
You too can get some gadget love with buying guides, expert reviews, and all the latest news on Gadgets 360.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV